I was a photographer for about over 15 years. So doing photography and multimedia, magazine publishing, anything creative, I've done it. And so, of course, in 2020, everything changed. First, I became a father. My son came 2 months early, and I guess he knew things was about to change because a week later, after we brought him home, that's when the pandemic hit. They just pretty much killed my business because I couldn't do the photo shoots. All the weddings were canceled. I couldn't shoot weddings. I couldn't do anything. So it was a humbling experience. I had to go to retail because at the time, it's one of the main things that was still open as a central business. When you're unfulfilled and you have a greater purpose, you got to make a change. So it eventually led me to UX design, in which I started doing research. So while I'm clocked in my retail job, I was listening to YouTube videos in my ear. I grinded extra hard. I stayed ahead of my cohort. I knocked up my portfolio first. I was applying for jobs before anybody else. I was just getting it in by any means necessary. By the time I completed my boot camp, I actually landed my first role within 2 months, and ended up being with a Fortune 100 company. And my first job offer, I was a contractor. And even as a contractor, my first offer was more than my manager was getting at the retail store.
Have you always wondered what a rewarding career in technology feels like? Then look no further. Join Technologists of Color as they interview some amazing people of color working in the tech space. Get to hear their stories and the advice they have to embark on your own successful career. Strap in and take a listen. Welcome to ToC Presents Get to Know. I'm your host, Mark Lawson. Today's guest is Christopher Bell. Known as Chris UX, he is the founder of the social media platform Weaverbird. He was a 2022 national finalist in the Mobile Hackathon Accelerator Startup Bus. Chris's professional story begins as a photographer, where he sharpened his creative skills and attention to detail in capturing images. Due to changes in circumstances because of the pandemic, Chris's journey involves a transition from working an hourly job in retail to a UX designer in the tech industry in the span of just a year. Over the course of this session, we'll get to know Chris better and hear more about his journey into tech. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Christopher Bell.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the introduction.
Happy to have you. The purpose of the show is to get people to understand and know individuals who are working in the technology industry and kind of hear their story. So I opened, with a brief bit about your background, but if you could, just tell us more about your story.
Yeah, so I was a photographer for about over 15 years. So doing photography and multimedia, magazine publishing, anything creative, I've done it. I had a studio here in Atlanta for many years. And so, of course, in 2020, everything changed. First, I became a father. My son came 2 months early. And
Congratulations.
Appreciate it, And so I guess he was ready to come out the womb, and I guess he knew things was about to change because a week later, after we brought him home, that's when the pandemic hit. So it was like back to back.
Okay.
And so, of course, so when the pandemic hit, they just pretty much killed my business because, I couldn't do the photo shoots. All the weddings were canceled. I couldn't shoot weddings. I couldn't do anything. But now I have my family, I have this newborn son, and I still have bills to pay. So, I still have to support my family. So it was a humbling experience. I had to go to retail because, at the time, it's one of the main things that was still open as a central business. And I had previous experience retail many years ago, as a teenager. So it was very humbling. I had to go back to clocking in back to retail, which I thought I was done with those days, because like growing up, I literally worked in almost every mall in Atlanta as a teenager, in my early 20s. So go back in retail to a big box retail store. Yeah, I didn't like it. I hated it. And, it was chaos because, this is during a time where people getting shanked over, Lysol and toilet paper. Like, things was, rough. So get up early in the morning, working there. And this one day I was just like, I'm looking at my manager and I'm like, man, like, do I really want to do this? Like, something I have to give because, when when you're unfulfilled and you have a greater purpose, you got to make a change. Oftentimes when people are unhappy, they just don't do anything about it, just deal with it. But in my case, I feel like I'm not really one to complain about the problem. I think is if there's a problem, what is the solution? And so it eventually led me to UX design, in which I started doing research. So while I'm clocked in my retail job, I was listening to YouTube videos in my ear, in my earbuds, and just doing my research and listening in. I was, today we have a luxury of learning anything we want now. 'Cause back in the day when I first started, I didn't have YouTube. You got to go to the bookstore, library, whatever. But now everything's at the palm of your hands. So I watched a ton of videos. I read a ton of articles. I reached out to people on LinkedIn and beyond by UX design. It's in just making sure that direction I really wanted to go. And I like UX design because I can still flex my creative muscles like I did in photography. And also the other side, as far as like, project management and collaboration with people and solving problems. And so after doing my research, I entered a UX boot camp. I did that for 3 months. And, when I was told in boot camp, they take 6 to 12 months to land your first role, which is the usual time frame. But I did not have the luxury because, again, I had a family to provide for. So I grinded extra hard. I stayed ahead of my cohort. I got my portfolio first. I was applying for jobs before anybody else. I was just getting it in by any means necessary. And to the point, by the time I completed my boot camp, I actually landed my first role within 2 months, and ended up being with a Fortune 100 company. And my first job offer, I was a contractor, and even as a contractor, my first offer was more than my manager was getting at the retail store. So it's like completely paid off. You know what I mean? Because I just knew I didn't see myself working my way up in retail, being overworked and underpaid. And I'm seeing my manager, he always in the store. Okay, you working 50 plus hours. You know what I mean? I didn't want that for myself. So I'm glad they all paid off entering UX design.
What made you target the tech industry to begin with? And you said you were watching videos and whatever, but like what kind of stirred you in that direction to start? And then were you familiar with UX as a concept or user experience as a concept before that? Or like how did you arrive at that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually taught multimedia at the small tech school on the south side of town, and one of my students, I was teaching multimedia to, he ended up going into UX design, and we ended up being friends after a while. So he also interned with me while doing photography for like bigger photography projects and photo shoots, and he just told me like, yo, like UX design will fit you, man, because like it's right in your lane. Like everything you taught me, I can see you doing this easily. So he the one that introduced me to the concept. Shout out to my friend Rex. He the one that introduced me to UX design. So yeah, I wasn't aware of it before then. But it brought to my attention that I've been doing UX for years, just not knowing that I was doing UX. So that would let me into it.
So for those who are listening who might not be as familiar with the term, can you briefly, kind of, what is a UX designer? And kind of what are the roles and responsibilities of someone like that?
Yeah, so I guess the best way to put it is a UX designer is the person that they advocate for the user of any product and make sure the user know how to use the product and make sure it's delightful to use. Because even if you know how to use a product, if you don't like using it, you're not going to use it. You know what I mean? So the UX designer job is to do research and then design based off the research to make a product for the user. So it's very important. And prime example of user experience, like I go to Quick Trip a lot, and sometimes you might see a handle on both sides of the door, but you're not sure. But if you go up to the door and you see a handle, your instinct is to pull it. But you go up there, you have to push. If that's the case, that's a bad UX experience, because what's the point of the handle is not to pull. You just remove the handle, then the user would know, hey, push it. So things can be as simple as that. But UX designer can a UX designer can do UX for any type of product. It's like some people think it's graphic design, some people think it's a digital product or an app. It could be literally anything. It's like to me, the best example of good UX to me that I think people can relate to is Chick-fil-A. I think Chick-fil-A is awesome. When you go to the Chick-fil-A drive-through, they have a great flow, and then they take care of their employees, which in turn take care of the customer. So, for example, no matter what time of season I go to Chick-fil-A, if it's in the summertime, they have fans outside for the employees. If it's cold, freezing cold outside, they have coats and that outdoor heater for them. So by them being more comfortable to work, they do a great customer service to the customer. And so like things like that can help the user experience all the way through compared to, McDonald's. They maybe look at you crazy like, hey, what you want? You know what I mean? So it's so many levels to it.
I think that's an interesting thing because I think as people look at software, right? Because we all have phones in our hand that give us access to different things, and everybody's been on a website. And I think almost everyone, in addition to, like you said, a retail experience, people have had an experience with a bad user experience with a product, right? There's something that you're trying to purchase, and you don't know how to find it. You don't know where you are in the purchasing decision. Um, you're not really sure what you're supposed to do. And even in a corporate space, I know you have access to the employees, but you shouldn't need to have a training session, just
Right.
to operate, right? And the older software, that was, you had to go to a tutorial to kind of figure out how things were working, but that's lost productivity for the users, and in a commercial sense, that's lost revenue, because if I get in there and I don't know how to check out, like, I'm just going to leave it in my cart and leave. So I think that it's important that people realize just how important that is, to every piece of software that they're interacting with, that is a profession that they could go into. Particularly if you are. So in addition to the skills that you brought as your eye, in terms of being able to look at something and say, hey, from your photography background, what other skills does it entail that you
Yeah.
would think that somebody who is transitioning and wanting to get into this would look and say, hey, I can see that as a potential for me?
Yeah, I mean, 'cause I know oftentimes, like, people think of photography and you just see like a pretty photo. They just think you just have a visual design eye, and, which is true, but it's so much more behind that photo. But you have other soft skills you have to use. Like I had to plan. I had to get together with makeup artists, a stylist, the model, the location. I had to, project plan these things together, these concepts. I work with others. Sometimes we don't agree. You have to work through, disagreements. Like, there's so many soft skills that you learn through photography directly transfers right over to the UX or any corporate space, because it's something you always had to deal with in life. You know what I mean? So you just have to lean into it. And then, unfortunately for me, I had somewhat of a tech background. I mean, show my age. My first exposure to computers was Windows 3.1. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So my mom bought me a computer, Windows 3.1, and she couldn't afford a computer desk. We had a computer on the floor. You know what I mean? But this is for me. But she just wanted me to have access to a computer because she knew, that would be the future. So I always had I was always kind of tech savvy. You know what I mean? I was a teenager. I was one of the guys that read Wired magazine growing up in high, in middle school and high school.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so it wasn't like I went strictly went from the camera into UX. Like, I always had a love for tech, and I love anything that's different and innovative. And so to me, that made that all that much easier to get into UX.
Does your current position involve any coding?
No, not at all. Thankfully, and that's
Okay,
the
so
reason.
you are in the tech industry. Yeah.
Yep, in the tech industry.
Yes.
Yeah, because I was doing research, and I'm tech savvy. I don't know how to code, so I knew that one direction. I knew that one direction I wanted to go. Like,
Mm.
I done web design during my photography days for small clients back in the day, so I can read basic HTML. I can sometimes see if a code is broken, but as far as like just typing code from scratch, that's beyond my pay grade.
Right, which is fine, right?
Yeah,
Because the idea is for people to recognize that there are more things that go into the finished product than just the coding itself. And if you are not inclined for that portion, that there are other opportunities within the field. Uh, so
absolutely.
you said that you went through a boot camp,
Hmm.
and that was where you had your training, and then you were able to subsequently find a job fairly quickly. What was your first experience like, the very first time that you were there responsible for, uh, you know, doing the profession, right? Like
Hmm.
how did the boot camp experience compare to the first couple of days on the job?
Mm. Uh, the first days at camp, it was like exciting to me because I feel like it was like going to high school for the first time. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
uh, before we designed anything, they taught us to use pen and paper. So it was kind of fun for me to go to Walmart and get colored pencils and paper and pens like this. I was excited to learn something new. Just really dive into UX design. Um, but the boot camp, which I want to warn most people that it focuses more on the research than the actual UI design. So and they're kind of like they kind of surprised me on that front. Uh, Compared to my first day on the job, my job is mostly UI, so I had to learn like Figma and UI design on my own for the most part. I had a little help in boot camp, but that was most of it I had to study on my own and work with other people. As far as first day of the job, and one thing I can't say is intimidating, but everybody was warm and friendly to me. It was slightly overwhelming because, I work in the healthcare tech and I'm healthcare ignorant. So like that was a whole new word for me. So,
Mm-hmm.
but everybody reassuring me, like letting me know, like, yo, you don't have to know everything day one. Like it will take you a few months to get a hang of it. And that was good to hear because it's so intimidating when you applying for jobs. You read some of these job descriptions, even for entry level, they want you to be like a 10-year expert in everything before you even apply.
Mm-hmm.
And now you realize, like, yo, you actually get yourself in this space. And like, I remember the one guy told me, I talked to him on LinkedIn. He's like, man, think about it. Every job you get hired at, they're going to train you. No matter how much experience you have, how much you know, they can train you. And that's what they did on the job. So of course I'll be able to pick up on things pretty quickly, but it just made things a lot more easier for me.
Technologists of Color strives to provide a growth platform for African Americans in the technology industry. We help you enter the industry and nurture your career goals. Our core programs focus on connecting, informing, teaching, and collaborating. If you are looking for a community to take your career to the next level, join Technologists of Color. Find us at techsofcolor.org.
The on-the-job training, the fact that you were prepared for researching, but you didn't have a background in the medical. So in helping someone, navigate their way through a system, did you have to do interactions with your end customer to kind of get to understand how they would approach the flow of the application?
Yeah, to be honest, I want to say the first 6 months, I didn't even have access to the actual user. But so what happens is I'm put inside of a team. It's me as a designer, my PO, which is the product owner, and my the dev lead. And so the product owner talks to business where they're getting all the requirements from. So business talking to her, talking to my PO, letting her know, like, yo, this is the problem we have, that we were trying to do. This is things we're trying to improve upon. And she brings that to me. Of course, she brings that to me. If this is healthcare, I don't know what the hell she's talking about. So it's up to me as a designer to ask a whole bunch of questions so I can understand what's going on, so I can figure out what the problem they're trying to solve it. So, and one thing you learn, as a UX designer, you should be able to do UX with anything in any industry. You just have to know how to ask the right questions so you can understand it to solve it.
In addition to entering into the field, navigating kind of like how a tech team is set up, were there any surprises about, like what the profession is like and the terms and the, like kind of the positions that people hold? Because obviously it's different than retail, it's different than other things, as well as I guess also things are often changing. So to kind of on a company by company basis, right? Sometimes, you share the same role on paper, but how they do it at that company may in fact be different. So how did you negotiate that in terms of trying to figure out like what was required of you?
Yeah, that was a big learning curve because I came in as a student. Anytime I'm in a new space, I come in as a student trying to learn. You know what I mean? So that's what I went back. so, I come in trying to learn something new, and so I was dealing with that. I was dealing with imposter syndrome. That was another big one for me. I had to get over that, and then I had to learn to eventually learn to be confident enough to take charge. So I was so busy trying to follow behind the PO, but eventually once I got comfortable enough, I began taking the lead on it. Like, okay, now I'm following up with her. Now I'm picking her a lot more. Like, hey, this is what I need. This is what I need from you. This questions I have. I'm doing my follow-ups with her. And then, of course, having the dev lead, I'm asking my dev lead, like, okay, is this possible? Does my idea work? Because one thing about corporate, if they're supposed to be agile, things still move slow sometimes, So I had to make these adjustments. Like, okay, how can we make ourselves more efficient? You know what I mean? So instead of me trying to meet with one person once a week, okay, let's set up a group chat so we can talk on a daily basis. It's like seeing a screenshot, let you know what I'm working on. So you're in a meeting all day, I'm sending you something like, you let me know I'm on the right track to solving a problem. So I just had to learn how to step up into my role And but I'd say the biggest thing was imposter syndrome, because you step into the space and you're new to the space, and these people have been there for a couple of years ahead of you, and you just try not to mess up. You just not trying to like lose your job. You just not trying to come off like an idiot. But I had to learn not to be scared to ask questions, because that's part of the job. But sometimes, at least for me anyway, when I first started the job, I was scared to ask questions because I wanted to come off as not good enough, or I didn't know what I was doing. But ask questions, it's natural. It's expected. They expect you to ask some questions. So that was a learning experience for me. But I eventually caught on and running it.
Were there any other resources or other things that you used in order to help get you up to speed? You mentioned that you had to learn Figma, and did there's probably some tools that you had to also get to know in order to deal with the Scrum, or maybe you guys were using Kanban or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned that you grew up like read magazines like Wired and things like that. Were there any resources that you tapped into? Were you still looking at things like YouTube videos or any other
Yeah.
training material in order to get you up and running?
Yeah. One thing I think one thing that really helped me breaking the tech is like really fully immerses myself in UX. I want to get to the point where, like, even our smartphones had the algorithms to the point they even started chasing the articles that show you based off your taste or what you're interested in. So I just
Mhm.
wanted to be UX everything to the point where Google was showing me nothing but UX articles every morning, or how about social media? I'm following the UX hashtags, to see what's new, what's the trends were. I would listen to UX podcasts. Like, I'll fully immerse myself in it. Hopping on LinkedIn, I was only adding UX people, to see what they're posting. And you learn so much. You could digest so much in 5 minutes, and like a little bit of tidbits or an article or a post. Then I had to read the whole book, because I bought some books too, but I was learning more just from reading stuff, here and there on a break, or you have some idle time to read a UX article of some sort, just really just diving deep into it, and then and not being scared to ask questions to people online, because one of the things I did was I looked up a whole bunch of UX designers that was in the area, and I messaged them. I introduced myself. Of course, I didn't ask them any open-ended questions, because I already did my own research. I would ask them real particular questions that I get answers from that I wasn't getting from the YouTube video, and I got a lot of great insight on that. So, but yeah, that helped me a lot. But also, the other end of things was I had also learned the hard way that it takes more than being a great UX designer to get a UX job. I had to learn how to interview. That was a whole nother challenge
Okay.
for me. You know what I mean? Because it's like, yeah, you can be the best UX designer in the world, but if you don't know how to connect with the hiring manager or how to connect with the recruiter so they understand where you're coming from, or win them over, it's hard to get a role. So that was a whole other skill I had to learn. That was brand new for me, because I was so used to working these I call them PlayStation jobs, like retail and other places where you had a simple resume, you give it to them, you interview, you get hired. But here it's like these people gotta like you, because they understand they hire you. They had to work with you on a day-to-day basis. So sometimes not only they trying to see your UX skill set, they trying to see how you are as a person, or what's the word they use, the company culture fit. You know what I mean? So,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
so I
Yes.
had to I had to I had to learn those things. Like, that was new territory for me.
Over the course of your career, have you had any kind of like changes in culture after those initial situations where like, hey, this is not how we used to do it at the previous job?
Yes, it constantly changing,
Mhm.
honestly. And one thing you have to
Mhm.
learn how to is adjust and adapt to it all. Like, know how to pivot, and and that was adjustment for me personally, because I was never the fit in type. You know what I mean? Like, usually some people can say, "Oh yeah, this is the table you sit at in the school cafeteria," or this is how you sit on a school bus. This is who I used to hang with. And I was never any of that. I was always kind of like to myself, but I got along with almost anybody, you know what I mean? But it took time to realize for myself to be comfortable within myself, of being an outsider. Like, like my favorite group is Outkast, like, and I think that's that for a reason, because I didn't fit in anywhere. But I had the ability to be able to connect to anybody. It's like a big thing with UX is empathy, and people say that quickly, but but that's something I do well. And I feel like from my upbringing to my work. And I think what helped me out a lot is that I really do care about what I do. And to your point, they're like, how much do you like UX design? Because some people, are you here just for the money? Are you here for 9 to 5 and that's it? Or are you really just living this lifestyle? And for me, I'm always working on something. Like I'm always solving problems because I like helping people. And I feel like in most people I was helping, like people who have a side hustle, a side business, they try to pursue into a full-time thing. They usually have some type of UX problem they need to be solved. And I love doing work for them because I know my work, I see immediate impact of my work, compared to your point of corporate, it's me at the meetings of permission and rejections and whatever. It's probably be agile, but this one little requirement to take a week in startup, taking like 2 months in enterprise, because so many other people involved, you know what I mean? So, and I had to learn to adapt and adjust to each side of that. I recently had some work that was tossed out. Like I worked on a project for a few months that they begged me for, so it was a must-have, that they really needed it. And then they hit me up in email, like, hey, we decided not to use it. We need you to do this instead. And that can happen.
How did that feel? I know for me, there's a pivotal moment in my career where I went through, and it was a fairly large design, right? There were a lot of changes, big rollout. I learned a lot about that because at a certain point in time, it had to be rolled back, right?
Yeah.
Because I would say that there was not enough buy-in by all stakeholders, and that taught me a lot about. Um, it didn't have anything to do with the technical side. It had to do with the management, the development in terms of the business development side, about making sure that each person is keyed in to this release, and then from a technical side, rolling things out in phases and not doing things in such a large chunk, because there was kind of like a running point of contention, because somebody would say, hey, it would be great if it did X. And I would always go like, that was in that other version. And now we have to kind of, figure out how we bring that back, but it rested on something that we didn't get to roll out. So how did you deal with that, right? Because it's like, this is your design. This is gonna, it's going through its process. You can't wait for it to it's a creative, artistic endeavor, and then no.
Yeah, and it never goes live. It just
Yeah.
it was an initial shock. It just like, for real, like what I mean, I guess it's like almost like the now that actually happening. But for me, I got over it pretty quickly. Like it's some other designers, I can tell they are personally hurt to this day. For me, not so much, especially when it comes to enterprise stuff, because I'm there to do a job, and like I did my job, I solved the problem. Now, it's up to them if they want to use that solution or not. So I had to learn how to take it personal, and I understand it's like any other place, it's gonna be politics involved sometimes. And then I also had to understand what I like most about the job I'm at. And for me, I don't love healthcare. I don't think, to be honest with you. But what I do love about my job is I get to learn so much. I get to work with a team of designers that's more senior than me, and I'm learning so much from them. I'm learning so much from the experience. I even learn from the bad stuff. You know what I mean? So I had to take from it that it's not some designers take it as a loss or a waste of their time. I don't take it like that. I just take it like, this is another part of my learning experience, because in my mind, I'm just trying to learn as much as I can, as fast as I can, and apply those skills and what I'm learning back to my own thing in the future to help other businesses within my community. Like that's my end game. So, and to me, for something to get rejected, it doesn't affect that at all.
I think that's interesting that you say it like that, in terms of like, because I think that on the outside end, people don't recognize that even if you're not actually dealing with the images, that like most of the people in the tech industry, this is a creative endeavor for them, even though there involves like some zeros and ones and that type of thing. And so people can become personally attached to having certain things be deployed, or looking forward to their contribution being made. But in that same vein, with the speed at which things are going, even though that new release is done, there might be something that a competitor puts out there, or there might be some type of change where there's going to be a new design next year, next 6 months, that you just can't kind of sit there and say, hey, my baby has been released to the world and we're done because we're going to be doing this again. Just again, due to forces that are the changing expectations of the internet. So somebody who's responsible for user experience and how a person is used to working and interacting with a piece of software, it's not just like what they do in your product, but it's the fact that they use Facebook or Amazon or some other product and they're doing things. So how much inspiration do you draw from looking at other people's products, as well as recognizing kind of some feedback that doesn't actually have anything to do with your product, but it's just, hey, it's a new feature that somebody else released, and all of a sudden they kind of like expect that in your product?
Yeah. Now for my day job, I draw my inspiration from my fellow designers because you work on a large platform. That's why I require multiple designers. And within this huge platform is multiple products. So of course, if it's this one whole platform, everything had to look the same. So they had their own design system. So I just can't put my own creative twist on anything. It got to be familiar for the user to go from product to product. So usually with the day job, for a fellow designer, you're working on a totally different product. They have a unique solution to a problem. I'm like, I can take a piece of this for my own problem that I'm trying to solve over here. So day job, I can bounce around for my fellow team members, which is great. Now, as far as stuff I do on the side, my freelance clients, like small businesses and startups, I would pull from Amazon or any online experience or just out and about. Like I pull inspiration from anything. Or for me, I don't watch a lot of TV, but I read a lot of articles and I watch like a lot of documentaries on YouTube, and I pull from that. Like I can see UX problems just from reading an article. Like, you know what, this probably wouldn't have happened if they did X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? Compared to A, B, and C. And I end up. It's funny how some of those articles may come back to me with something I could be working on for a client, and it just fits right in. So yeah, I gotta learn to put inspiration from everywhere.
In that experience that you're pulling things in, how do you deal with the speed of change in terms of keeping up with the trends? So I'm gonna date myself, but I'm when the iconography of the internet kind of started to change, right? Like everything changed. We need round corners. We need, like all the notion of what makes something look modern. So all of a sudden, all of this software is old simply by the look of it, right? And that's kind of what you're in charge of. You're in charge of the look and the flow, and it's functionally correct, but something about it makes it look dated. Yeah. So how do you deal with that in terms of keeping up with, like you said, you guys have an internal set of design that you need, but let's say like from a freelance standpoint, if that someone has brought you in and they don't but they want it to look new and shiny and have all of the bells and whistles that make it look of the now.
Man, I think the biggest problem with freelancing with a lot of clients, they all want something beautiful and fancy and modern, but they want to skip the UX part. They just want the shiny things. You know what I mean? So honestly, like this past year, I did very little design work freelancing. Like most of my work in freelancing is destroying their work. I hate to say it like this, but I come across like a lot of clients I come across, they come to me last, or they come to me once their product is already in development. And I was like, well, you kind of did it backwards. You know what I mean? Because now, because first I'm doing this like audit of what you have. And when I do the audit, you made an app or you made a product for yourself and not the user. So yes, it looks pretty. Like I had one client that had a beautiful app, but I had to destroy it because it was bad UX, because it was made for the user in mind. It just looked pretty. And they didn't understand that. And I think that's a problem. It's funny because I think that's a problem overall in person that I'll come across in Atlanta. From photography, working in the fashion and music industries to UX, like the mindset still the same. Like I just feel like we live in an era in Atlanta that everybody would just want to be famous and look good, but now it's actually functional and it's a selfish mindset, in my opinion. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, you want something flashy and modern, but we can't even talk about this yet because I had so many other questions that you didn't answer. Like right now, like everything you built is built off your assumptions, and none of this was validated. You don't even know if people even want this because you got the prettiest app in the world. If they don't want it, they're not going to use it. like like I just came across a client recently that had the exact same issue. Like beautiful product, no usability, like no UX, like, and I was like, well, it looks good. I mean, by modern standards, it fit the trend, but I don't see it being successful because you didn't answer all these questions here. You didn't take the time to figure out what they wanted. So fortunately, yes, I didn't have. So I never really had an issue this year as far as keeping up with trends per se. Because most people I've been coming across, I had to make them go backward and they don't understand too. Like especially for a small business startup, development is expensive, especially you come out of pocket or you trying to raise money for funding. And as you know, like even early this year when the startup banks crashed at the beginning of the year, I want to say Valley Bank, whatever it was, and you got to make your dollar stretch, but you throw away your money because you're so quick to try to make an MVP, so quick to try to put out a product, and it's like it's going to crash and burn because you by have proper UX, you can save thousands and thousands of dollars by correcting it during your research process to pivot then rather than after the fact. You know what I mean? But yeah, I'm glad you say the freelance space because because the day job it's not an issue because one thing they told me when I did my interview was like, yo, I know typically you want good UX for the product so the users want to use your product, but this is healthcare. They kind of like don't have a choice but to use it because they need it. You know what I mean? But we try to get
Right.
the best out of it. So they put me in a different mindset for that. So yeah, they're not keeping up with the trends. They just trying to keep up with making sure everything's staying functional. But in freelance space, yeah, they do want to keep up with the trends. But from my personal experience, I think here in Atlanta, uh, I think more clients they take the time out to really know that like really think about the user, not themselves. Like a lot of people and I get it. We all creative people. We had great ideas, and I give props for wanting to pursue it. But one thing they don't understand is we have a great idea. If you actually work on a project, like for me, I worked on projects for years, and one thing I learned that any great idea or project that I work on, it's always going to change and evolve as you work on it. It's supposed to. The more you work on it, the more questions you answer, and things change. But I've never been a part of a project where they have an idea from the ideation session from the day one, and they end up being the final day product when they go live. Like I've never seen that in my life. Yeah.
Right. I think many people expect it to be that way. I think they are most used to purchasing things, right? And if you buy a home in the real world, doors come in a particular size. Otherwise, it's not the code. You know, when we talk about a bedroom and we mention certain things, they're kind of standard. But
Right.
when you're talking about software, um, it's a combination of what it is you're actually trying to perform from a function standpoint, but also how the user interprets it. And that even from the standpoint of an enterprise level customer, it depends on that industry. So as you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, in the medical industry, depending upon what age group we're talking about, like what job function or what portion of the house is using it, whether or not we're talking about it's something that's being used by users, it's something that's being used by doctors or other people. Uh, Sometimes, right, the changing of the features is a bad thing
Mm-hmm.
because or is not necessarily appreciated because they just got used to the current design.
Right.
Um, and so there is not as much of a need for a change. And then in other cases, as I said, if you're customer facing, perhaps based on the type of things that they're used to, like all of a sudden this can make this look old. So like we kind of might need to do a refresh, just simply because the way the iPhone works, and this looks like the old iPhone, and for whatever reason, for sales purposes, this makes the software look old. I think it's interesting though that you mentioned how relevant you are in your job role as early as possible, right? So for individuals who are listening, who are listening to something like this because they're looking for their CTO, or they're just trying to get an understanding of like what the industry is like, the fact that the technical component is necessary throughout the entire process. It's not just something that you can come on at the end and say, hey, make this look good without
Right.
addressing, right? Because it's not just UI, although you said you spent time doing the user interface, but it's the user experience. So maybe these screens are in the wrong order. Maybe this is shown in a way that's not intuitive to the customer, right? So what types of things, if you could do this over again and you could talk to a younger version of yourself and say, hey, here are some things that I would focus on as I was attempting to get into to this career, if somebody now reaches out to you in the way that you reached out to other people, what would you tell them?
Um, Life is definitely about change, because like when I started photography, I thought I'm going to retire doing photography. I thought that that's going to be it, because you speaking to the older generations where they just went to school, graduated, went to college, graduated, got a job for 20 years and retired, and that is no longer the case. You know what I mean? Like the photography, I never thought when I first got into photography. First of all, I worked in the darkroom with film, right? And then I saw the first digital camera. My first digital camera I worked with took a diskette drive, like to diskette disc inside the camera. Like some people these days won't even know what it looks like. And so like they put a diskette inside the camera. And I'm like, okay, yeah, it's something new, but I didn't really see anything, I didn't see today, where we would be at. So like I didn't understand how and back in those days, everything was so expensive. So you're thinking like, man, I'm pretty secure. As long as I got this equipment and my skill set, nothing's going to change. But if I was to go back to my younger self, I'll tell them like, hey, technology is going to change. And it may also mean that you may have to change careers multiple times, and then that's okay. Don't be scared of it. Don't take so long to pivot, you know what I mean? Because I seen it. I feel like in a sense, I came to UX at a good time because my business already being affected by technology. Like when I first started, we didn't have camera phones. We didn't have Instagram and all these things. So those things started killing my business anyway. So I was bound to make a change regardless. It just so happens 2020 to put a hard stop to it, where I was like, okay, you got to pivot now or never. But looking back on it, I was going to have to make that change, and not just photography. You can almost apply to almost any industry. You go to the grocery store now, it's mostly self checkout now. You don't have your lanes anymore. You go back in the day, you used to buy a disc. Now everything's over the streaming now. You don't have hard copies anymore. Everything's changing over. And I noticed like a lot of companies, if you notice like a lot of companies they be real stubborn or real resistant to change, they end up suffering because by the time they make their change, it's too late. A good example of that would be BlackBerry. Like BlackBerry was hot and popping at one time, but things started changing over. They didn't pivot fast enough. Microsoft laughed at the iPhone when it first came out. And by the time they took the mobile scene seriously with the Windows Phone, it was too late. I love the phone. I love how innovative it was and different it was, but it was too late. You know what I mean? So like the CD to the iPod, like it's so many ways you can look at it. So I was just telling my younger self, like, like don't get comfortable. You may have to keep changing, but it's okay because as long as you're willing to learn and adjust as needed and pivot, you'll be okay.
I think that's encouraging, as well as quite true that the one thing that we can count on is change. And having said that, AI is something that people are really concerned about, while simultaneously very, very much looking forward to it. So with all the different things that using that term AI entails, one of them is the ability to kind of like talk to a device or have it interpret motion or movement or those type of things. So with regard to user experience, right, are you anticipating or have you done any work where the thing that you are working with is not simply visual?
Yeah. I actually, I would take it at heart. So, I have a general interest in AI. I understand the threat of it as well. I mean, like any other tool can be used good and bad. I definitely see both sides of it. But I remember the one person said I saw on YouTube was like, AI would not replace UX designers, but it will replace UX designers who don't use UI. I mean, AI. So I was like, yeah, I can see that. So like I took it upon myself to learn more about it. Even something as simple as ChatGPT. In my freelance stuff, it's helped me a lot. Now, when I say help me, not in the sense that it does my work for me, but if I have any ideas I need to bounce off in a quick manner, it helps me out a lot. Like or I needed to redesign my website for my UX agency, and normally it probably would took me a month. I did it in a week and a half thanks to AI. Because any ideas I had, I didn't have to wait to talk to friends or get feedback. I was just typing in stuff to ChatGPT and giving feedback and responses to help me generate new ideas to help me execute the plan I wanted to achieve. Uh, so I've been wanting to embrace it. I've seen other designers been very resistant to it, and I think it's gonna bite them in the butt eventually. Uh, but I definitely see the dangers in it. Of course, this America going to America. You know what I mean? Like they're gonna find ways to use
Yeah.
technology so they can save money
Mm-hmm.
and make more money, and it gonna affect the people in the end. I totally understand that, and that's another reason why I lean into tech as well, because like industry are crashing right now. I mean, it was a time where truck driving was known to be a well-paying job, like commercial truck driving. And now they get having hard times because it's not regulated. Now they get low blows now. People who are doing Uber and Uber and Lyft in the beginning were paying good money. The wages almost cut damn near in half now. Like, and because they invested so much in the self-driving cars, they already been working on replacing the drivers. They already been foreseeing it. You know what I mean? So, uh,
Right.
yeah, so that's what I'm saying. You got to be open to the pivot and be aware of these trends that's going on. And it's right there. It's right in our faces. We just got to pay attention to it. You know?
I think that one of the things that you mentioned, right, is the you immersed yourself in it, right? So you utilize the technology around you to help increase your knowledge. So you've mentioned LinkedIn, you mentioned YouTube for videos, you've mentioned podcasts. So all these social media innovations that have come about, right? You can kind of curate what it is that you want to take in to help accelerate your learning, assuming that you have the interest in doing so. And um, the other thing that you mentioned is, and I alluded to it in your intro, is that from your photography and your eye for detail and other things, that is not dependent on any user interface, any tool, right? Like that's an internal eye for how things should be put together. You mentioned your empathy, so how you can relate to individuals and understand what they want. And then ultimately, in that regard, AI becomes a tool that you can bounce off of, you know, your own internal ability to take the information that you get from other people and shape it into something that they want. I think that is something that would be encouraging for people to recognize that the skills that used to be considered soft skills are going to be the skills that are going to kind of carry you through, because those are the things that it is harder for us to code, right? Like I can't, what's the term now? Like vibes. I can't code vibes, right? Like there's sentiment analysis and there's all these other type of things to try and figure out, okay, that was a smile, that's a frown, that's a this, that's a that. But like all of the other, things that we have internalized where we can recognize that like, yeah, the customer doesn't like this. And when,
Yeah.
and they're saying yes, but this is actually a no.
Yeah.
Like the interaction component that you have of being a person, interacting with the person and bringing that to it, or this is not really like I need to say this, but I need to say this in a different way as you're working with the customer, right? Like this is not a good idea, but I can't say this is not a good idea
Right.
in this way, right? So, I think all of those things are things that will help people in their career as they go forward to make sure that they take the technical components, but that they continue to infuse their humanity, because that is the part that is the least likely to be coded away from them, because that's why everybody's so happy that AI is coming, because it allows for ambiguity, hopefully, right? Like the
Right.
idea that it would be able to tell that that was sarcasm. Although I'm not really sure, because as far as the written word is concerned, people get upset with each other across text messages
Right.
in terms of being able to understand. And like, you're my friend, you're my boy. But I looked at that and be like, what does that mean? Right? So it's like, and then this is a person who you don't know, or in this case, a machine, the AI trying to figure out your intent. When we come up with new phrases and new terminology and new things on a daily basis that also differ by friend group. So the ability to pivot, the ability to apply your own humanity. What are the biggest challenges in your role today?
That's a good one. Yeah, I had to learn I learned a hard lesson within my first few months of my job, and that was 'cause after you finish, like, solving a problem, doing your UX job, you had to present your work to, they call it a peer review for your peers, and basically they know their job is, is a group of designers, they looking over your work, this is to make sure you had the best solution possible to this problem for you, so we ship it off to dev, right? And but that how it's worded on paper, but the actual experience was, I felt like I was walking in the middle of the gladiator pit. Like, I was thinking of the gladiator, and everybody was attacking you. Like, everybody lines attacking you, and they're chopping out your design. But I had to learn, like, one, I can't take it personal, for one. So that's one experience I got from it. And another lesson I learned was, you could be a great UX designer, but you have to learn to defend your design. So because I had a great design at a peer review, but I still lost. And I remember my manager pulled me to the side. He's like, you got to learn how to defend your design. So, like, yeah, it was a great solution that you had, but you got to learn how to defend it as well. You got to be prepared for it. So, and one thing I had to learn was, when I'm working on a problem, I had to look at what would other designers think about this? What would they come up with, and why is mine better? And I try to solve that before I get to peer review. So when they come hit me with it, I'm like, well, I did think of that, and that doesn't work because, well, my idea is better because this, that, and the third. You know what I mean? So there's so many different skill sets go into UX design. Like, yeah, great. If you have an eye for visual design and UI, that's awesome. But to your point, I think the greatest skill set that's needed for UX design is people skills, the ability to read people and empathize with people. Because we live in a generation now. It's funny that this world is based off social media, and it's probably the most antisocial people generation I've been across. like they sit here and they argue with you all day on the internet, and they don't know how to talk to you face to face. And it's funny because the first time I know this is going to be a problem, and this is back when I was a photographer. I remember I was hired to take pictures in the club. So, the club popping, the good music and everything. And I walk in the club, and I'm like, it's really hard for me to take pictures of anything because all I see was a line full of people against the wall. And all I see was soft glows of their phone on their faces. They was all on their phone, not interacting with in the space, right? Then when I go home, and I looked on, like, I think it was like Instagram or Facebook at the time, and you look at the hashtag of the party, everybody talking about how lit it was, how much fun they had. I'm like, are we talking about the same party? Because I was there, and all y'all just sitting there on the phone. Yeah, didn't interact at all. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah. So I think you have real people skills. They go so much further in life in general, not even just the UX. And you understand their people. You know, because we live in a very selfish generation right now. They all think about self or how they can look better than anybody else. It's it's amazing. I feel like people on social media as a whole, like generally speaking, that they want to be loved and envied at the same time, which is weird to me. Like you want to be loved everybody, but you want to make everybody jealous of you and your lifestyle too. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it's like, you know, but if you step away from that mindset and think more selfless, like for me, I always had a mindset, how can I help others? You know, and to me that make my job a lot easier, but it also helped me make a lot more connections. I met like a lot of new people that way because I wasn't trying to get nothing from them. I wasn't trying to get over on them. Like I feel like Atlanta is a city of scams now. City of scammers. Everybody trying to get over on somebody. Like no, like okay, how can I help? Because I really enjoy. I want to see everybody win. Because in my mind, if you win and I help you win, I'm gonna win automatically. You know, like instead of me trying to sit at the popular table right now, I want to work with who got next. Yeah, because of course he's trying to go who popular right now, they're gonna blow you off because you didn't you in that practice when they're throwing basketballs up 100 times a day before they got to the playoffs. You know, like you just can't step up to them. But I like to be around who's next, and we be the next generation. So I enjoy that. But you know, but you got to. But in order to do that, you got to be comfortable thinking outside the box. You know, like my intent is not to be famous. My intent is not to fit in or have everybody like me or envy me. You know what I mean? Like I just want to be the best person I am possible because I do feel like no matter what your beliefs are, I do believe every person here for a reason. I'm alive for a reason. And every day I'm like, okay, did I maximize my day? Or like when the time comes and it's time for me to go, what can people say I've done for them? Like what can I say about my life? You know, like are they will say, oh yeah, man, Chris UX always try to get over on me as I do my project or he gave me good advice, or he helped me out here and there, or gave me some really good input here. He came in, he was clutch for me in a situation, like, and that's what I enjoy doing.
What that makes me think about, right, is your brand, right? Like if you're gonna use these new terminology, your brand is what or your reputation is what people think about you. Like so, and then having a community of individuals who you can access and who can access you and who can speak well of you. Are there any activities, like do you go to conferences or attend any like meetups or anything like that that help you create that community and help um, move your reputation in a positive direction?
It's funny because I was going to the Technologists of Color meetings before I even landed my first job. Just to
Oh, really? Okay.
yeah. Even before even when I was in boot camp, I was coming to the event, and even though for a time I met mostly developers, it was good to see getting their input on things and seeing things from their point of view. I still learn and glean from that, and met some great people along the way. I just recently had my first speaking engagement at the conference on Friday from Heffley, which is a UX research group, and that was awesome because it's very rare to see a conference dedicated to UX. Usually we like the sideshow of a conference. Most stuff I've been to be like more towards developers or engineers. But I still go to them because I feel like it's something I can gain and learn from it. Because, like I say, on my team, I have a dev lead. I got to be able to communicate with him or try to understand where he's coming from, make up to a product. Um, but yeah, but that conference is awesome. Just meeting other UX designers and researchers and people with different backgrounds are very diverse and different stories. I loved it. So I'll always look for opportunities to go. I went to Render earlier this year. Black in Tech. I went to Black Men in Tech conference last year in Florida. So I try to get around as much as I can because someone told me, yeah, because it's funny enough, the reason I started doing that because I was applying for jobs and I reached out to people on LinkedIn. I was like, yo, like any advice of how to land that first job? And multiple people told me network. And at the time I didn't really understand it, but now I do. So, I was thinking from the standpoint of, oh, you had to talk to somebody to put you into a job. That's my set I had. And that may happen, but,
Mm-hmm.
it'll be so much greater than that, because I learned so much from hearing people's stories and their backgrounds and what they're going through and problems they solved. And it's so much more, and also get to know that you're not alone, because sometimes you get a little lonely, thinking like, you fighting trying to get across the property line, trying to get the next yard. And it's good. There's other people to keep you encouraged. You keep each other encouraged on your path. So it's awesome.
I think also you mentioned it. It can help you with that concept of imposter syndrome, right? Like the idea of what it is you're supposed to be capable of, and how this experience is supposed to go, and then juxtaposing that through what you're actually personally experiencing. And if you get around people who have your same or similar background, like you can get some feedback to to recognize, like, no, this is a common experiences that people have. This is what it's like to be new. Like everybody is being asked to do a bunch of things. Um, that the pace is very quick. Um, I think that one one of the things you mentioned, right, is um, after if you've been in more than one type of job situation, right, like you can notice the pluses and the minuses of those different things. And then if you can talk to different people, they can help prepare you for this is normal. This isn't the way that
Yeah.
you were doing it at your previous job, but that's the way things are over here. Like if this is the medical industry, this is what we care about. These are the important things. This isn't necessarily exactly like uh, this other industry, right? And so that everything you're experiencing is true and correct, right? And can help you feel and adjust better because it's just not in your head. It's other people are experiencing it. Even if it comes to relationships or other things uh, with regard to being a black man in this space, right? You talked about some of the ones that you mentioned are predominantly featured by black people or people of color. So in those situations, you can start to see, trends and things and be able to share information about, what that's like and what that interviewing process is like, um, what you might experience when you see or feel that culture fit, how to best approach those things. So all of that is very important, so that anyone who's attempting to get into the field recognizes that it's not just a matter of your technical skills. It is those other skills, but it's also having people to reach out to in the way that you did, as well as people that you can share with on an ongoing basis so that you can, like you said, reset your thought process to you're not alone. You're
Yeah.
not the only one this is happening to. This is, as well as they can help kind of let you know how the wind is blowing. Like you mentioned, changes. There can be people who can tell you like, hey, here's what I'm noticing. If you're following people on LinkedIn and there's a lot of hashtag so-and-so company sucks, that's something to know, right?
Right.
If there are trends going on and you're like, hey, there's a recruiter from that company in my inbox right now, I need to reach out to somebody to find out what's going on. Um, so I think that anybody approaching this needs to kind of expand their mind on what technology career looks like, that it has opportunities, and that you can bring in features from your regular life, and that they're very important to the longevity of your career. And I thank you for bringing that to us today. Um, where can we reach you for those who want to get in touch with you?
Yes, so definitely you can reach me on LinkedIn. Just type in Chris UX, I will pop up. You can also check out my agency website, inspired-ux.com. That's my UX agency that we work with clients on the side, small business and startups. And, we help solve their problems within 2 weeks, depending on your problem that you have in mind. But those are two best ways to reach me. Definitely reach out to me. I'm very approachable. I'm always out networking, like I said. Yeah, just hit me up.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you
Everybody
so
give it up
much.
for Christopher Bell, Chris
Yeah,
UX.
thank you.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and share. Click the subscribe button